me, Zachy.
I don't know, Junior. This is too fast for you, old man.
It's gonna be fun.
Woo! Woo!
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let's go, Daddy. Let's go.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Oh my God! What's going on? You're gonna kill me, son.
Hold my bear. Hold my bear now.
Okay, I got it.
Watch this. Get some of that. Oh, my goodness.
Those are two of your pastors right there. The worship pastor and our children's pastor was driving that vehicle. There are people who believe, and maybe many of you would agree with this statement, that you can't fix stupid. You can fix a broken car, you can fix a broken washing machine, but you can't fix stupid. I want to suggest over the next few weeks that, in fact, we can. Now, I may be at odds with some very intelligent people. In fact, it was Albert Einstein who has a famous quote that said, "I believe there are two things that are infinite, the universe and human stupidity, and I am unsure about the former." And Einstein may be right. I mean, stupidity is infinite. Nobody has to work at being stupid. You don't have to get up in the morning and go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the stupidest thing possible. I'm going to think about it. No, stupid is easy. You don't have to prepare for it. It doesn't take any practice. It takes no extra work to be an idiot. All of us are infinitely able to make bad and stupid and dumb choices. Because stupid comes in so many different varieties. There's kind of casual stupid. You know what casual stupid is? It's when you're not paying attention and you trip over something, or you're driving home and you're daydreaming and you drive right by the exit to your house, or you drop something and you say, how could I have been so stupid? That was really dumb of me. It's kind of like when I walked up to a woman many years ago and I looked at her and I said, "Oh, when are you due?" And she gritted her teeth and said, "I'm not pregnant." That's kind of a casual stupidity. Then another kind of stupid that's out there is habitual stupidity. Habitual stupidity is when we know that this is a bad idea, but we do it anyway. Or we find ourselves overeating or overdrinking or watching too much television, and even in the middle of it, we say, why am I doing this dumb thing? When we have bad habits that we habitually perpetuate and we know they're not good for us. And we look at ourselves in the mirror and we say, how could I be so dumb? There's also the tragic stupidity, the kind of stupidity that leaves scars, that leaves wounds, choices that we make, decisions that we make, relationships that we enter into, financial investments that we make that go badly. And years later, long after it's over, we hit ourselves in the head and say, how could I have been so stupid? Stupid is easy. Stupid is everywhere. Stupid is infinite. Stupid is ubiquitous. But before we give up all hope, before we surrender to the stupidity, I want to suggest over the next few weeks that we can push back against stupidity. That there is a way for us to free ourselves from that incarceration of our own idiot behavior, if we are willing to do one thing. Today I want to begin with where we start to do that one thing. But before we begin talking about what that one thing is, would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight, and that you would use your word spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to challenge us to be wise. Pray that for myself and for my family, for all of us here. For I ask that In Jesus' name, amen. What was the stupidest thing you've done recently? I mean, I'm sure that some of you are here today going, oh, I've already done some knuckleheaded, stupid things. In fact, one of the dumbest things I've done so far today was showing up here. I mean, we all do stupid things, but what was really one of the dumbest things that you've done in a while? And while you're thinking of that, I'll share with you. I'll be transparent. I'll go ahead and share with you the stupidest thing that I have done recently. It was about 7 weeks ago. It was on Saturday, April the 14th. I was getting ready to be here on Sunday. I had gone home and gone to bed, and it was about midnight, and I woke up because I had this sudden stabbing pain in my lower left chest. I mean, it was bad enough that it woke me from my sleep. And it hurt every time I breathed, and when I rolled over, it hurt, and I didn't know what this was, and I kind of lay there and wrestled with what's going on, and I began to think about it, and I realized that this was serious. This had woken me from my sleep. I tried to go back to sleep. I went and I took a handful of ibuprofen, and that didn't help, and I was just laying there wrestling, wondering whether I was going to have to call our team. This is what you don't want to do when you're a pastor. At 1:30 in the morning, call the members of your team and say, I'm not going to make it tomorrow morning. You have to cover for me. And I didn't want to do that, and I'm laying there, and I'm wrestling with what I should do. So I did, and I don't mean to throw an entire gender under the bus, but I do what most men do. I took some more ibuprofen, and I went onto WebMD. And I began to look up the symptoms. And you know, I first of all ruled out appendicitis because it was on my left side and appendicitis on the right side. And I checked out kidney stones and gallstones. I thought maybe it was a spleen infection. Maybe I had some kind of knot in my colon. And I went through all of the symptoms for over an hour. I was looking, trying to self-diagnose, and couldn't come up with anything. And I decided, well, I just got to ride it out. Just got to suck it up. I don't know if you remember that Sunday, April the 15th, I came in and I apologized to everybody. I said, something wrong. I said, I think I hurt myself while I was working out because I'm such a monster in the gym. You know, I was probably there, you know, I probably had 400 pounds and I'm benching it and I probably dropped it and probably cracked a rib. And I remember kind of apologizing because it only hurt when I breathed. And that was a problem that morning, but it didn't help that my wife Diane was out of town. She was in Pennsylvania visiting her father, and so I didn't have anybody to tell me, go to the doctor, you're an idiot. So I just kept self-medicating and checking online to try and figure out what was wrong with me and taking 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen every 3 or 4 hours and, you know, just kind of thinking I'll press through it. In fact, that Wednesday, I had dinner with my oldest daughter, Kaya. And we were over at Jack Allen's, and she said, Dad, what's going on with you? What's wrong? And I said, well, you know what I think it is? I think last Friday, I went with a friend of mine to Cooper's Barbecue, and I had a real pile of extra moist brisket, and I think it's just stuck in there somewhere. And it's not digesting. So I actually went to H-E-B and got one of those, you know, I don't know what you call it. I call it colon blow. It was kind of a, you know, cleanse the pipes thing. And so I'm sitting at dinner with my daughter. We get about 3/4 of the way through dinner, and it kicked in. And I was like, I got to go, sweetheart. Bye. I'm out. I got to go right now. And I mean, go, like now. And so I got through Wednesday. My wife got home later in the week, and she said, are you not feeling well? And I said, no, I'm really kind of under the weather a little bit, but I'm pushing through it, and I need to be here Sunday. Because that following Sunday was a big day. I mean, I had a message I was very excited about, and we had baptisms. And we only schedule baptisms a couple times a year, and this is a big deal. And there were a lot of people that were counting on me to be there, and I wanted to be there, and I wanted to do those baptisms after this service. And then that evening, we had our first celebration of our outreach ministries, and we had hundreds and hundreds of people coming, and it was going to be a great celebration, and I was going to talk to them, and I needed to be there that Sunday night, so I had to press through that Sunday. And I made it to Tuesday. But in the early morning hours of that Wednesday, I was in the Westlake ER. And the doctor recognized an idiot when he walked in, which was me. And they did a CAT scan, and they did a chest x-ray, and they said, you have a large infection in your lung, you have pneumonia, and we want to admit you into the hospital. And I said, whoa, 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 you mean like stay at the hospital? I've never been in the hospital in my life. He said, yeah, you know, your oxygen levels in your blood are not really good, so you should stay. And I said, is that like a rule? Do you have to keep me? And he said, no, we can't make you stay. I said, well, good, because we've got a men's retreat coming up that weekend, and I want to go on the men's retreat. There's a friend of mine flying in from Indiana. I want to spend the weekend with him. So just give me the strongest drugs you can give me, and I'll shake it off by Friday. Well, they did, and they sent me home, and I didn't get better, and I didn't go on the men's retreat. A week later, I was in my personal doctor's, my family doctor's office, and he took one look at me and sent me across the street to the hospital. I went into the ER there, and they started running tests, and I texted a friend of mine. He's spoken here before. His name is Dr. Mark Felger. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon, and I texted him. I can show you the text. I said, hey, my doctor is his brother-in-law. I said, your brother-in-law is making me go to the hospital. Can you get up here and break me out of this place? I said, you know people, I don't want to stay here. So about a minute later, he calls me. He said, what's going on? I said, your brother-in-law is making me go into the hospital. He said, well, let me talk to him and let me check, and I'll get back to you. And it was literally about a minute later, he called me, and he said, I'm coming to see you. We're going to do surgery in the morning. And he explained to me that I had what is called an epiema. I thought it was the girl from Ipanema. But I have an epiema growing, an infection, an abscess in my chest wall, and the only way to treat it is surgically. They had to go in, and they had to do surgery and open me up, and he had way too much fun describing how they were going to scoop all the gunk out of me. And so I wound up in the hospital in ICU for 4 days, and I miss a month of being here. Now, medically, the reason that all that happened was I had a really bad bacterial infection in my lung that kind of abscessed into my chest. And that's the medical reason why I was that sick. I was in the hospital for the first time in my life. I had surgery for the first time in my life. I was as sick as I had ever been because of that bacterial infection. But that wasn't the only reason that I wound up in the hospital. The other reason was I had a chronic case of stupid, because I probably should have gone to the ER that first night. But because I am an idiot, because I am practiced in making stupid decisions, I pressed myself into a place where I had to have hospital treatment. Now we know how to deal with a bacterial infection. You know how to treat a bacterial infection. You take antibiotics. But what do you do for chronic stupidity? Well, I would suggest that there is a prescription for it. We could call it an anti-idiotic. The Bible calls it chokmah. Chokmah. In the Hebrew Bible, there is a word that occurs over and over. It is the word chokmah, and it is the word that we translate wisdom. Now, wisdom is not just intelligence. It's not just information. It's not just knowledge. The best definition of the Hebrew word chokmah that I ever heard was skill in living, skill at life. Many times in the Old Testament times, skilled or expert sailors were described as chokmah. If they could navigate in dangerous waters, if they were masters of their craft and they could find faraway ports, they were called chokmah sailors. They were skillful sailors. You see, information and wisdom, the information and knowledge and intelligence is everywhere. Wisdom is applied knowledge. And we develop the ability to push back on our stupidity by gaining chokmah, wisdom. In fact, the Bible has an entire book that is devoted to giving us wisdom. It is a book of undiluted sayings and sort of compressed down wise information. It's called the Book of Proverbs. I've often used the Book of Proverbs, especially the middle chapters of the book, as a tutorial when I'm working with men who want to grow in their faith, who want to grow in their marriages, who want to be discipled, because it's instruction on how not to be an idiot. But it tells us in the book of Proverbs, in Proverbs chapter 1, it says, the beginning of knowledge is the fear of the Lord. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. The book of Proverbs, Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10, says almost the same thing. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. In our efforts to push back and to apply that anti-idiotic prescription to acquire wisdom, it begins with one thing, the fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. Now, typically, when you hear the phrase, the fear of something, you think that means being afraid of something. And it'd be easy for us to imagine that the fear of the Lord means being afraid of God. And we would cast God as some cosmic boogeyman, some celestial ogre, some spiritual Santa Claus who's making a list and checking it twice. He's going to know who's naughty and nice. And we're afraid of God because we're afraid of being on the wrong side of God. We're afraid of God's wrath. And part of that is okay. There needs to be a healthy respect for the holiness of God, for the righteousness of God, for the wrath of God. And there's part of fearing God that means I am afraid of disappointing God. But that's not all that the fear of the Lord means. The fear of the Lord represents being aware of God, being in awe of God, being aware that God is concerned about our lives, that God is involved in our decisions and in our choices. And wisdom begins when we remember that, when we understand that. And I think that means two things. I think, first of all, that we begin to be wise. We begin to take the anti-idiotic. We begin to press against the stupid. When we remember that we are accountable to God. We remember our accountability. That God, to be in fear of the Lord means we are aware that God is concerned about our choices. You want to invite stupidity into your life? Imagine that what you do doesn't matter. Imagine that the choices that you make have no significant consequences. That invites stupid into our lives. But we invite wisdom into our lives when we recognize that we are accountable to a God who is concerned about our choices and the consequences of our choices. You realize how vulnerable we become to making dumb decisions when we don't consider the consequences of those decisions, to saying dumb things when we don't consider how those things will affect others. I think we're all well versed in how stupid it is to live life thoughtlessly and carelessly and without a consideration of the consequences of our choices. Now, we don't always know what the consequences of our choices will be. Sometimes we can't predict the outcome, but it is foolishness, it is stupidity for us to enter into a process without giving any thought to those consequences. God is preoccupied with that. About 9 months ago, we were together as a team and we were planning messages and Sunday mornings for this year. And I said, what I want to do in the summer of 2018, I want to have a series where we have fun. I just want us to be silly and lighten up and kind of celebrate, kind of like a time in the summer when we can put our feet up and relax and we're not dealing with the heavy stuff of life. And I said, and I want to do a series from the book of Proverbs, and I want to call it, Hold My Beer and Watch This. I thought that was hilarious. I thought, this is going to be funny, because wouldn't you want to come here? Oh, I'm going to go to that church. What are they studying? Oh, hold my beer and watch this. That sounds great. I want to go to that. But the more I thought about it, I thought, well, if we're saying come and we're going to talk about hold my beer and watch this, what if there's someone who over the course of their life was victimized by a DUI, who lost a family member or who lost a loved one because someone said, hold my beer and watch this? Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if there is someone here. But as I thought about the consequences of labeling it that, I thought, well, I don't think I want to do that, even if that hinders one person who is looking for healing, who is looking for hope, and that title, those words, that saying, which is not offensive to me, if that hinders them, well, let's change it. So we changed it to you can fix stupid. Because I thought about the consequences. I don't know if that's true. Now I realize that even by using the word stupid, I'm offending some of you who are parents, because I know that some of you have in your home a banishment on the word stupid. Your children are not allowed to use that, which I think if you're calling someone stupid, that's inappropriate, but using the word stupid, I think, is okay. I think it's kind of stupid if you can't use the word stupid, actually, but I said, okay, I realize that may offend some of you as young parents if your kids are here and they go home going, Dave said stupid 1,000,000 times. But without considering the consequences, we invite poor choices. We invite stupidity into our lives. I think what it means to begin to gather wisdom means to fear God. And fearing God means we are accountable. Our choices matter. The consequences of our choices matter to God, even when no one else notices. Even when we walk away going, nobody got hurt, no one will know. You are accountable for those choices. And I think we press into our own stupidity when we remember that. That's what wisdom looks like. That's what wisdom birthed out of the fear of the Lord looks like. The second thing that I think it means is accountability, teachability. I was never more of an idiot than when I was convinced I knew everything. Have you ever met anybody who was absolutely sure they knew it all? You will never meet a stupider person in their life. Because we are born into a world that is designed to continuously teach us and tutor us. And as long as we are learning, we will grow. And when we think we know it all, we will rot. Proverbs 1 is a warning. Proverbs 1 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Now, despise doesn't mean that they hate it. Oh, I hate being smart. I hate learning things. No, it means that they fail to learn from things. They are no longer teachable. They believe that they know it all. It is foolish for us to believe that we are done, that there's nothing else for us to learn. And we don't just learn from our lives, we learn from the lives of others. Have you ever heard the phrase, experience is the thing that you get just after you need it? Well, you don't have to make all of the mistakes in the world to learn from those mistakes. You can learn from the mistakes of others. This is where wisdom presses into stupidity, because we notice the outcomes, we notice the results, we notice the fruit of the life of those who make stupid choices, and we say, oh, I don't want to live that way. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is learning from the mistakes of others. I actually believe that is the beauty of the Bible. You ever ask yourself why the Bible is this story, this collection of a wreckage of humanity? Most of the stories in the Bible are stories of less than perfect people who make stupid choices. People who make mistakes. Apart from the story of Jesus, and by the way, he was surrounded by idiots. Apart from the story of Jesus, virtually all of the other stories in the Bible are stories of less than perfect people. Why is that? So that we will learn from them. So that we will not be like them. So that we won't trip over the same things that trip them up. So we won't fall into the same chasms that they fell into. Because this is how we acquire wisdom. By learning from the mistakes of others. By being teachable, by surrounding ourselves with people who will say, this is where I went and this is what I learned. These are the things that I learned to stay away from. These are the things that I learned to avoid. This is what it means to press into stupidity, to fear the Lord, to gain wisdom, to remain teachable. But there's one thing that's worse than failing to learn from the mistakes of others. It's failing to learn from our own mistakes. There's a saying that I've used since I was a teenager, and it goes like this. The tuition in the school of hard knocks is way too expensive to fail the course. Life is going to beat us up. Life is going to teach us hard lessons. Don't fail to learn those lessons. This is what it means to gain wisdom. This is what it means to fear the Lord, is to constantly be teachable, to constantly learn from the mistakes of others, and to learn from our own mistakes. And this is where wisdom begins. As we are aware of God's concern for us and our accountability to God, and as we are aware of God desiring to continue to teach us and to tutor us and to guide us, and to learn from our failures. It's where God redeems our mistakes. I believe this is what it means to fear God, and where wisdom begins, when we are accountable and where we are teachable. This is the dose of anti-idiotic that is prescribed for us in the book of Proverbs. It is the chokmah, the wisdom. We don't have to live in a prison of our own stupidity. We can be set free by applying wisdom. Not just by learning about things, but by applying those lessons to our lives. We can grow and we can learn, and we can press into that stupidity if we will pursue wisdom. Now you may say, Dave, I hope you learned your lesson after your adventure in medical history. I hope you learned your lesson that the next time you have a stabbing pain in your chest that wakes you up at night, you will go to the doctor. And I like to tell you, I like to imagine that in fact I will. I mean, next time I'm going to the ER. I was walking in going, I coughed. Somebody needs to look at me. I would rather pay a $30 copay and have a doctor tell me I'm a hypochondriac than pay a $50,000 surgical bill and have a doctor crawling around inside of my lungs. I would much rather be the guy who is a little too cautious, because I've been the guy who wasn't, but I can't promise you, because I don't always learn my lessons really well. Like that woman that I walked up to and I asked her when she was due. That was not the first time that happened. There was another time, a few months before that. I walked up to a woman and I saw her and I said, oh my, when are you due? And she looked at me and she went, how did you know? We hadn't told anyone. To which I said, I'm a pastor. I know these things. And you would think in that moment, when I was spared the incredible humiliation of putting my foot directly in my mouth, I would have learned, do not ever walk up to a woman unless she is actually in labor. I don't care if her body looks like you could paint pinochle on her abdomen. I don't care how convinced you are that she is pregnant. Never say to her, when are you due? But I didn't learn that lesson the first time. Now, the second time, if I see you in the delivery room, I will ask you. Short of that, you're going to have to tell me. Oh, did you know we're pregnant? Oh, really? I couldn't tell. Learned. See, you applaud because you know. Stupid is easy. It's everywhere. There's another quote from Albert Einstein that I really like. He said, the difference between stupidity and genius is that genius has its limits. It is not hopeless. We are not incarcerated in a prison of our own stupidity. We can press against it if we will fear the Lord and seek wisdom. There is an anti-idiotic. It is chokmah. I know there are those who say that you can't fix stupid. Well, I want to suggest that we can. We can repair it if we will do one thing. Wise up.